Hey, Joce, do you ever wake up ready to do the Angry Chicken or maybe one of your other podcasts that talk about a game possibly made by Blizzard Entertainment and think to yourself, why can't this company stop shooting itself in the foot in terms of its public opinion?
Yeah, man, it's been a tough day to be a Blizzard fan. Understatement of the century, I think.
It's been a tough year.
Yeah.
We've been pretty stoked on this particular podcast for a while now. 2019's been it's been a good year for Hearthstone.
It's been a great year for Hearthstone, and I think that's what makes a lot of this even more unfortunate is that, we've had even criticism in the past couple of months because, we've been so up on the game, so positive, having so much fun. And, being called, cheerleaders and fanboys and whatever. But I really and truly believe that Hearthstone is in the best place that it's been in a very, very long time. 2019 was a great year for the game itself. It was a great year.
Yeah. Which just it's just kind of an arms up in the air kind of thing, like as a content creator, which is like inherently selfish in its own right. Because, we're not directly tied to Blizzard, actually. Like we are as if it needs to be spelled out. We're independent, y'all. We don't get paid by Blizzard.
Imagine that.
Yeah, we really don't. I've been on a couple BlizzCon panels, so they've flown my butt out there, but that has been the extent of Blizzard ever hooking me up. And they send us codes and stuff, and we appreciate it. We really do. Like when you're doing fan content, that kind of stuff goes a long way. But again, we are independent, and if you can't tell, we're also human, and we're struggling today, y'all. It's been a weird day to wake up and want to do a Hearthstone podcast. And to be honest with you, Josh, I don't want to do one today. I don't. There's nothing fun surrounding the Hearthstone pool, as it were. There's just a lot of angry people. I think rightfully so. And we figure we would just rip this Band-Aid off right at the front because you and I have spent like the last 48 plus hours working really hard on what we thought was going to be a jam-packed show, full of overall pretty good news, some emotional news. We thought the worst thing we were going to talk about today was relegations in Grandmasters, because it was emotional. And I think in a certain way, to me, I was looking at that, and that's what I was struggling with wanting to talk about. I'm like, how do I talk about relegations? How do I talk about Grandmasters? Because in a certain way, it was some of the highest stakes I think I've ever watched in the history of esports. And at the same time, one of the saddest things I've ever watched, and I think kind of shone a light on some of the bigger holes with the Grandmaster system. But something much bigger and much more inciting has happened. And if you haven't figured it out by now, if you haven't figured out what we're dancing around, as I said, we're human. Please bear with us. This is we don't know how to really approach this. But
and actually, I mean, that's a really, really good point. And something I want to stress off the top of this conversation is that Garrett and I are gamers. We are commentators on the basically games that we like to play. And at best, we're reviewers. We are certainly not experts on the geopolitical state of the world, nor are we in any way, shape, or form. I mean, I feel like this is the disclaimer that went at the head of the layoffs talk that we did a little while ago, is like, we're also not businessmen or business analysts in any way, shape, or form. So I think there's a whole lot of this conversation that makes me personally feel very uncomfortable because of my lack of knowledge and understanding. So bear with us.
Yeah, that's the thing.
We will do our best.
I know we're getting real,
understand where we're coming from.
Yeah, we're getting real meta with our pre-production talk here, but it's because I don't know about you, but I've already been personally attacked on Twitter multiple times today before I even got to say my own fucking opinion. So I'm gonna cuss a little bit today, folks. I'm sorry. I don't know about you,
we have chicken sounds for that, right?
Yeah, if I think to go back and do it. I've had a bad day already for personal reasons, and then I'm getting attacked by strangers on the internet. some of that is coming into this. So anyway, all of that said, we're not going to make everyone happy. So I'm going to do this the best that I can, which is try and inform you about what the hell happened. And then I'm going to have some opinions for you all. So, Grandmasters, we're not talking about relegations, although sort of, a little bit in a technical way. We're talking about Blitzchung, everybody. You probably already know. I probably don't need to run this down for you. But in case you missed it, over on the Chinese stream for Grandmasters, player Blitzchung used his winner's interview. This was on the Taiwanese stream to call for the liberation of Hong Kong. And this is where us not being geopolitical experts or even journalists at all. We're no kind of journalists, Jocelyn. This is where,
that is a true statement.
Yeah. But to say that there has been unrest in Hong Kong would be putting it lightly. There have been 18 weeks, I believe, at this point, of protests against the Chinese government. And so the player Blitzchung took this as his chance to make a statement. And he made that statement in his winner's interview by putting on a respirator and like ski goggles, because the Chinese government just made it illegal to wear a mask, because this is what the protesters are doing to protect their identity and in some cases their safety. And then essentially, in very very shortly, called for essentially justice for Hong Kong.
Yeah, basically. So what he said, translated from Chinese, was liberation for Hong Kong, the revolution of our time, I believe. And very shortly after that, the broadcast was cut to an ad break.
Yeah. The casters basically hid behind the desk, but you could also hear them snickering.
Yeah, I have since my first initial tweet last night when I first saw the news break, because unlike Garrett, I am actually up until 4 a.m. most days. So that's very much when this was posted. And so my initial reaction was based not on watching the broadcast. They have removed the broadcast from pretty much everywhere. It's been scrubbed from Twitch, YouTube. You can still find it on some news sites, and you can find it on Twitter in some cases. But it has been, for the most part, scrubbed from the internet, as much as someone really can scrub from the internet. So I hadn't seen the actual broadcast when I initially made my comment about the casters. All I had seen was the screenshot of them hiding behind the desk. So it does appear, after watching the video, and I forget off the top of my head, I should have been more prepared, I'm sorry. But someone did tweet me, who had been watching the broadcast and speaks the language, did tweet me a little bit more of an insight into what happened. And the casters did kind of, I guess, not egg him on, but I guess give him the space to make his statement. So they basically said, say your 8 words and then we'll cut. And so, I mean, on the one hand, that's, the very least you could possibly do, I think, as a caster, and then have negative consequences. I don't know. I was surprised by the consequences for the casters, but I think that it's what really interests me about all of this is that Grandmasters are broadcast on such a delay. I'm not even 100% sure if this wasn't something they wanted to go out. I mean, they're on like a 45-minute delay. I don't know how this made it into the broadcast anyway.
Yeah, that's kind of, that's like my selfish hope. Like, I'll be honest, I don't want to talk about this. I got into podcasting about video games because it was a fun thing to do, and it turned into a job. And here I am many years later, having to try and wrap my brain around how does an idiot like me speak to very real world events and consequences of individual players' actions when making political statements like this. And so much of this for me is going to kind of come down to like my personal thoughts and everything. But yeah, I have no idea how it made it through. There's just so much weirdness with this from like a production standpoint of how this even got through, because they've since gone back, Blizzard is like whoever's in charge of the VODs has since gone back and scrubbed basically any version of this from history. Now, that being said, it's the internet. Everything lives forever. Of course, this has already been capped by a third party, and you can now find it on Reddit or basically any news website, not video game news website, not Hearthstone fan site, anywhere. You can find this. I first saw it on like NPR, and then CNN was talking about it. My senator, Marco Rubio in Florida, is tweeting about this and saying that it's a horrible thing. Because that's basically
because of what Blizzard did, right? All of this backlash and fallout is because Blizzard made the ruling that according to section 6.1 subsection O of the Grandmaster rules, Blitzchung was removed from Grandmasters immediately, had his prize money from season 2 stripped, and also was barred from competition for a year. In addition, both casters involved in the incident were fired. Their statement was that while we stand by the one's right to express individual thoughts and opinions, players and other participants that elect to participate in our esports competitions must abide by the official competition rules. Section 6, subsection O, is essentially talking. It's basically Blizzard's blanket, we can get rid of you for any reason that we choose clause.
It's far-reaching.
It's very, very far-reaching. It's basically like if you say or do anything that offends anyone, we reserve the right to remove you from the system and basically strip your prize money, bar you from competition, blah, 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 blah. So it is very much the overarching section of the rules that says Blizzard doesn't have to let you compete, and they've chosen to exercise that in this case.
Yes, and that they did. So Blitzchung is banned for a year and is retroactively having his earnings revoked.
Yes.
Which I believe from Blitzchung's tweets were amounting to roughly around $10,000 USD.
Which would be about right, I would think. I mean, we know what each Grandmaster gets for their appearance fee each week, and then if they win, they get double that. So that checks out.
Yeah. And then on top of this, both of the casters were fired.
Yes.
It. You know me, I don't like talking in blanket statements, but basically no one is having this.
Yeah, it started trending on Twitter. Like you said, it was being mentioned on all kinds of news outlets that don't normally cover this kind of thing. We've got, like you said, NPR. I saw it in New York Times. I saw, all kinds of stuff. Not to mention, obviously, it made Twitter moments.
Yeah, I got up this morning and I was like, oh, Blizzard is on Twitter moments. That's unusual. Oh my God, what the hell is happening?
Yeah, exactly. So they were on Twitter moments. It's been all over the place. They have made no further statement, which has almost, I think, angered the community even further. And it's kind of at this point now where I want to talk about essentially like there have been a lot of really terrible, horrible, awful things said about not only about Blizzard, because I mean, this was obviously a corporate decision driven by money. But I think what we need to remember in a situation like this is that Blizzard is a corporation. There are people who work for that corporation that probably don't agree with what is currently going on.
They definitely don't. People are at Blizzard covering up tenants on the Compass Rose around the statue in the center of campus.
Exactly.
Every Voice Matters is currently covered up with tape and loose leaf paper. Clearly done by an employee that does not agree with this movement or with this decision.
So I think it's very, very important for everyone to remember that it is okay to disagree with what Blizzard has done. It is not okay to attack employees, because I have seen all kinds of threats. I've seen all kinds of negativity directed at employees in general, as if people are literally searching Twitter for anyone that has Blizzard in their bio. And there have also been calls for violence against Blizzard, even posting directions on how to get to the campus and stuff. And it is unbelievably unacceptable. So I want to make sure that when we are talking about our disagreement with Blizzard in what they've done here, that we are very, very clear that we disagree with Blizzard, the corporation, and don't hold any employees individually responsible for this.
Right. At the end of the day, someone had to make a call, but we don't know who that is, and you don't know who that is, and it wouldn't matter if you did. You shouldn't be giving directions to campus.
Yeah. So, all of that said, basically, like I said, this very much seems like a corporate decision. Obviously, the conflict in question, first of all, Blizzard is, I think, essentially trying to remain apolitical and not have any sort of leanings publicly one way or another, especially since, Mike Morhaime has left. We saw him make very strong statements against hate and discrimination, but never call out any one side either way in any political climate. And I think it's also very important, again, from the corporate standpoint, to mention that Activision Blizzard is 5% owned by a Chinese multinational internet company. So they don't want to anger a literal shareholder, not to mention that the Chinese gaming industry is a $32.5 billion industry in 2019 so far alone, which is literally the biggest company spending money on biggest country spending money on games right now. So I very strongly believe that this was a corporate business decision that was made by Blizzard. Obviously, like we said, there's no further statement that has come out from them outside of just they have to abide by the competition rules, which means that we have to kind of read into this incident a little bit. And I think this is, even if the rules allow for the removal of Blitzchung from this, and it's also a slippery slope because I don't think that you necessarily, if you're Blizzard, want all of your Grandmaster players to be speaking about their political views on camera. It's not what esports is about, right? So I think that they're probably trying to nip this in the bud and make an example, but I think the punishment in this case is extraordinarily harsh. I don't believe that he should have been removed from Grandmasters. It was a first offense. It's obviously something that is not only very close to his heart, but he's made another statement now to InVan Global talking about how he wanted to call attention to this. He felt he had to because he had a platform, and that by doing so, he's putting potentially his own safety at risk. And I think his actions were extraordinarily brave. And I don't agree with basically bringing the hammer down on him for what is essentially a first offense, let alone the casters. I mean, they didn't say anything themselves. They allowed him to make his statement, which was then very quickly cut off. I believe that they clapped a little bit before the actual ad break happened.
They did. I watched it just before we started recording, just to have it fresh in my memory.
But I just think that is extraordinarily harsh for what is essentially, I mean, like, again, I am not a geopolitical analyst. I don't understand the storied history of Hong Kong and I know it was a British colony until recently, and now it belongs to China, and they're not happy with that. That's the extent of my knowledge in the situation. But I think that if anyone is ever protesting to the extent of losing their livelihood and their safety, then that's probably for a very important reason and cause. So with that knowledge, I believe that I stand with him in what he's trying to do. And I think it was extraordinarily brave. And that's about all I feel comfortable saying, because I just don't know enough. I just don't.
Neither
but
do I.
I don't think that what Blizzard did was correct, because I think that even if you look at this as an infraction of the rules, like forgetting exactly what happened, looking at this strictly as an infraction of the Grandmaster's rules, like, you're telling me no one gets to do anything? Like, there's no, like, this was, like I said, a first offense. And I think that a first offense is this is bringing the hammer down for no reason.
Agreed. Yeah, I'm with you. My understanding of all of the political implications are pretty lousy, to say the least. But personally, I always tend to look at things of this nature, and I just always ask myself, are they punching up or are they punching down? And in this case, they are definitely punching down.
Blizzard is?
Yes.
Oh,
yes,
okay.
This
yes.
is an individual.
Okay. Okay. Got it.
Yes. This is an individual who feels very strongly
yes.
About things, about injustices that are happening in their country. And they made, I think, what a lot of us look at as a pretty even-keeled statement publicly.
Yes, and this is the thing, like I was talking about the backlash on Twitter a few moments ago. This is the reason that I support Blitzchung and what he said and how he said it, is because he called for the liberation of his country. He did not call for violence. He was not inciting any kind of hate speech. He was talking about and promoting the protests in his own way, in a way that was nonviolent. And I think that's very key. Like, he didn't say anything and I struggled to even think if I should even give examples on the podcast. And I think that I'm going to choose to not, but he didn't call for any sort of violent act from any person or international body against the country that was oppressing his own. So I think that it's the way that he chose to protest was the best possible way he could get his message across while still remaining level-headed and nonviolent. And I very much respect that.
Yeah, and that's that's kind of the weird place my brain has gone at the end of this, which is with what I'm calling a really overreaching reaction by Blizzard in terms of their punishment of Blitzchung and the two casters. I think they've poured gasoline on what was a pretty small spark. Although not whatever. Doesn't matter. Small fire. I think if you poured gasoline on a spark, it probably would just snuff it out. Yeah.
Look at you with the science.
This is getting so much more play than I think it would have ever gotten had they just let it go.
100%.
Not even getting into the technical production discussion of this is on a delay. How the hell did it even go live? Like, why not just cut it out? Why let this go up? You're on a delay. That's the first question. But beyond that, okay, whatever. At first you're thinking, it's not that big of a deal. And then, Papa 10-cent calls and is like, hey, what the hell is this shit? You need to do something about this. I don't know. That's where I just want to, my brain just starts to try to justify the insanity, or not justify, but like talk about just the insanity of this from a business move. Like, this is not good for business. This is not a good look. And yeah, I get that China is a large part of your market for this game specifically. I mean, if you're watching the video and you saw, I think it was some of my World of Warcraft Google searches come up on the side there. It's because I was trying to recall the exact article that I was reading from back in January of this year that was talking about spending in Hearthstone mobile. And this was a report done by Sensor Tower. It's a website that deals in like mobile purchasing analytics and stuff like that. But they talked about how last year there was a fall off of spending on Hearthstone mobile in the United States by roughly 10%, whereas compared to Chinese saw an uptick of over 34% in purchasing into Hearthstone. So that certainly. That's a relatively vague number, like 34% of what? Or actually, never mind. It says below. I didn't even notice this. China's iPhone, iPad users accounted for about 31% of spending in mobile Hearthstone last year, or approximately 51 million, up from 24% in 2017. Okay, so there you go. So that's a decent chunk.
It's not insignificant.
It is not insignificant, but I don't see that. If this is accurate, I don't see that as significant enough for how bad this looks to everyone else. Including I'm sure certain players in China.
Well, yeah, I mean, so you've got 35% of your mobile spending in Hearthstone came from China, but that still leaves a whole heckin' lot of us who are not happy with this decision. So, I mean, that's still what, 65% of your revenue comes from outside of that region. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, it seems like there has been a lot of I'm no longer supporting this company talk, which granted, there has been a lot of that talk for a number of different reasons in the past 12 months. And it's going to be very interesting, I think, not only to see what the vibe at BlizzCon is like this year, but also I'm interested to see what the actual earnings calls look like at Activision Blizzard in terms of money that they've made or not made in 2019. Because if I had a nickel for everybody who said I'm not playing any more Blizzard games and I'm uninstalling everything and they're not getting another cent from me, I would be a rich woman. So I'm interested to see if that's actually affected the bottom line.
I think it's going to be most interesting after this event, because it's to me, it's kind of crazy that this event is getting, to me, in the circles that I inhabit and circles I do not inhabit, because I'm hearing, like, my parents are like, hey, what's going on with Blizzard? I hear them talking about that. Like, that's insane. My folks, they barely understand what I do for a living, let alone, the inner workings of the Grandmaster system, not even like in this country. So, like, to me, I can't believe this is getting as much play as it is, because to me, it looks like it's gaining more attention than the layoffs earlier this year. We're talking about essentially 3 people losing their job versus over 800. And this seems to be inciting people more. Although I also think that there's probably a big sense of last straw at play here. So
could be.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I'm curious too about the earnings call as well. I think the end of the year for like Q4 is going to be more telling than anything else, because that's where we now exist.
Yep.
So yeah, I don't know. I'm personally, selfishly annoyed at certain people, just because they've come after me today and I didn't even have a chance to say my piece, and I'm sure I'm pissing you off even more right now, but whatever. I wasn't really thinking I was going to keep you listening in the first place. So, yeah. And to everyone else, we waited roughly about 30 minutes into the show to tell you, don't worry, we're still going to do our best approximation of an episode of The Angry Chicken following this, because we did prep a show and we put a lot of work into it. Damn it, we're going to do it. But we had to talk about this. And just because we're on here not saying, just because we're not on here saying we quit, we're done, The Angry Chicken is now a Magic the Gathering podcast, which some of the most outlandish responses I've received today. That's what y'all were asking for. I am sorry to disappoint you. That is not what we will be doing. At least not at this time. If I go to Magic the Gathering, it's going to be because I have suddenly found myself playing it more than Hearthstone. Yeah, it's hard. And this is where I come back around to we are human. And yeah, I don't agree with this. And this is not me. And just because I'm not like quitting it all and burning my Blizzard account in effigy, does not mean that I don't want people to make a stink. I don't think I've ever agreed with a stink being made in Blizzard's direction more than I have today. We've seen pushback, breed change before. And I have never wanted pushback to breed change in video games, at least in regards to Blizzard, more than I really have today, because this is a bridge too far in my mind.
I can agree with that.
So, with that said, we have a lot of links in the show notes. However, I am sure if you just Google Hearthstone China right now, you will find plenty of outlets giving you a much deeper and a much more well-rounded worldview of what the hell is happening in Hong Kong right now. So go check that out. We will keep you updated. I am frankly surprised we have heard nothing from anyone. Like, not even the other Grandmasters casters have said a damn thing.
Yeah, casters, players, everybody has been quiet on this. So we might get our butts kicked. Who knows? But I think we have to talk about it. And I think we did the right thing by talking about it.
I'm doing what I can do, which is being as honest as I can with you. And I'm sure some folks are going to want to smacked me around for this one, but this is where we find ourselves. So I was dreading this episode. I was really expecting some sort of follow-up statement from someone at Blizzard, because we're all pretty mad. I don't know if anyone's been on the subreddit recently, and I know I usually poke fun, but this is like on a whole nother level. This is all it's talking about.
Yeah, I think pitchforks are justified in this case. I think, against Blizzard, the company and its actions, not Blizzard, the employees. So keep that in mind. You are obviously going to see a lot of Blizzard CMs currently on Twitter, on the forums, on Reddit. Just remember that they're people too, and they're not the ones that made the call. So treat them with respect, please.
Same goes for everybody currently competing or working in Grandmasters.
That is also
Seen
true.
A lot of harassment in Hearthstone player chat today.
Yeah.
And it is beyond unfair in my mind.
Yeah, I guess people want them to just up and quit. I mean, we're going to talk about Grandmasters in a little while, but I mean, upping and quitting Grandmasters is essentially ending your career, and that is not a decision that should be taken lightly. I mean, I really hope Blizzard goes back on all of this, but I think going after the players is not the right call in this situation. I know you're mad. A lot of people are mad. We are mad, but there are times to take it out on players, maybe, but this is not the time at all. Like I said, you should be directing your anger at the decision makers at Blizzard, and we're never going to know exactly who that is. So direct it at the company. Don't direct it at the individuals, including the players. That's just unbelievable.
Well said. I'm going to wrap it up for this chat. The Angry Chicken is a production of AMove TV. Bookmark amove.tv for more gaming and esports shows. The Angry Chicken is directly supported by listeners like you via patreon.com/TAC.
Ready for action! I've got the beast in my sight. A podcast about Hearthstone, Heroes of Warcraft. This is The Angry Chicken.
Greetings and welcome back, everyone, to a rough approximation of an episode of The Angry Chicken. I'm Garrett Weinzierl here with Jocelyn Carney. And I know you're doing weird today, Joss. So I'm not even gonna leave it at that. We're doing weird. It's a weird day. If you want to hear our comments, there's a voice at the top of the show telling you what timestamp to hear those comments. Ugh.
We are going to do our absolute best today after having the conversation about the events in Grandmasters. We're going to do our best to pull together a good show for you guys. We hope you enjoy it. But yeah, we're in a weird headspace right now. So yeah.
Yeah, we're trying to figure out if it was better to have that.
This is the Angry Chicken.
Yeah, we're trying to figure out if it's better to have that conversation at the beginning of the show or the end of the show. And we're not doing it live because too many of you have yelled at us on Twitter today, and I just don't want to put myself in that Twitch chat environment. So we're doing it off air so that we can decide whether or not we think that conversation goes better at the beginning or the end. Doesn't matter. We'll figure it out. I'm exhausted. But also, this is our job. And I've also heard from a lot of you who weren't yelling at us that reminded us that we give you escapism when things are stressful. And sometimes you just want to know what's happening in Hearthstone. And so that's what we're going to do today. We're going to talk about it. We're going to just get right into this week's news because it is a big week in the game outside of some of the most bombastic drama in the history of Hearthstone. And that's Doom in the Tomb. Doom in the Tomb is here. This is normally where I play like a happy-go-lucky bumper and everything, but I'm not feeling happy-go-lucky. So we're just going to get in and talk about it. This is the event that brings wild cards into Standard. At the time of recording this, it's already live. It's already been live for a few hours. You can get in there. You can make a deck with Sylvanas, Jocelyn. You can make a deck with Ragnaros. Emperor Thorson can start discounting your cards. You've got some options. Sadly, it hasn't been out long enough for me to get on here and tell you whether or not Secret Paladin is successful again. But we'll let you know next week.
Unfortunately, we haven't actually had time today to dive into Doom in the Tomb, but I am still super stoked. It turns out the cards that we talked about last week are the cards that were announced on Friday. So a lot of our comments from last week can kind of carry over. We're not going to dive super deep into every single card that came back because we kind of did that with the leaks last week. So go back and listen to 234 if you missed our conversations about the cards that were at that time rumored to be coming back. But now that we know, yeah, they're back. They're live. It's happening.
Yeah, they are. They're back. It's live. It's happened. It has happened. It's here.
It is.
It is here. So what are you most excited to go play with? Like, all these cards are back from Wild. There's some serious like stars here. We kind of talked about it last week. It turned out, like you said, it turned out that leak was legitimate. So what are you, Jocelyn, when you're feeling up to Hearthstone again? What are you going to go in and make a deck with?
Well, first and foremost, the 1000 win portraits are also in the game now. We have now seen all of them. Jaina is the best, as I don't think anyone was, even wondering about that. It was clear from the start. Jaina is just fire, obviously. And so I'm super stoked that my wins above 500 are going to start counting towards something again. I'm not super stoked on that Rexar pick, but it's nice to know that being able to play, the classes I already have golden are actually going to be working towards something again. So that being said, I am really excited to jump in and try. There was Ike posted a Death Rattle Mech Paladin list that looks so disgustingly dirty. I think it's going to feel real good. It's got it's got a lot of like mech synergies and death rattles in it, and then basically throwing Sylvanas into that mix alongside N'Zoth. And if anyone played at the time of Sylvanas and N'Zoth, one Sylvanas was hard enough to deal with, but then when she was brought back by N'Zoth, it was just like, oh my god, why are there so many of you? So I'm excited to try Death Rattle Mech Paladin. Again, that link is in our show notes. It was posted by Ike over on Twitter, so you guys can check that out. But more importantly, Nicholas Deck Tech Weiss posted probably the most thorough theory crafting list I've ever seen. I believe there's either 21 or 23 theory crafted decks for the Doom in the Tomb event. And again, this is running from today, so October 8th, through till October 30th. So basically for the remainder of the month up to Halloween, you can play with these cards, which is really, really exciting. So if you guys haven't seen this already, there's an article over on Blizz Pro. There's a lot of stuff in here. There's a Secret Paladin list, and I know we talked about that last week. Garrett, you were also stoked to try Secret Paladin, and I want to see if this is good. I kind of want it to be for, it's like 3 weeks of time. I can deal with Secret Paladin for 3 weeks of time.
They've said that the cards are going to be in for longer than that.
Oh, did they?
The event
okay.
Itself
I thought the event ended and the cards went away.
I believe it was a friend of the show, Joe Mag, on Twitter, who works on the Brawl team, and obviously the event team, because the events are so closely tied with Brawls, who said that since there was some confusion, the event is 3 weeks, if the cards are staying longer than that. I believe he used the word, I don't have the quote up right in front of me right this moment. Been a weird day, y'all. But I believe the words were like up until around the next major update, which makes me think the next expansion.
Yeah, they've done major updates throughout expansions before, but I think at this point in the expansion, cycle, I think you're right. I don't know if we would see another major update before the expansion launches, because we're assuming like a late November, early December expansion launch, right?
Yes. Yeah, I'm trying to find the actual quote in the background, but yeah, so we've got some time with these cards anyways. So I'm excited for Secret Paladin. Deck Tech also posted a Tempo Burgle Rogue that I'm super excited to give a chance, because again, Rogue is one of my classes that I've never really dabbled too much in. I think it's a really cool
but kind of complicated class, and I've never really done too well with it. So I feel like a tempo list is something I can very easily wrap my head around. And then on top of that, I've got the whole burgle thing, which just makes every game different, which is something I really love. As much as it's like RNG, let's be honest, I'm not going to play in Grandmasters anytime soon, so I might as well have some fun.
Yep. I didn't find the exact quote, but I did see Joe Mag in here replying to another question along the same lines and basically said these cards will be around for about 2 months. As long as they're available in standard, they're going to be in our collection.
Awesome.
So we are good to go on that front. I love that we're highlighting this article by Deck Tech, by the way. We need to have him on. He and I talk on Twitter a lot, I feel like. So, Deck Tech, if you're listening, consider this your informal invitation. I guess it's happening on the podcast. I guess this is a formal invitation.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Personally, and someone asked me this on Twitter while I was stuck in an airport for almost 4 hours over the weekend, what the card I'm most excited for is, and the answer I gave him was Sylvanas, and it was pretty much in line with my comments from last week, which is just Sylvanas is just such a good puzzle. This is the card I'm most stoked for returning. Sylvanas is one where I understood why it went away. She was very popular.
She was all over the place.
She was way more popular than she is now, considering WoW lore. Oh, I just made that joke. But
get out of here, you traitor. Some of us are loyalists.
I think she's healthy. I always thought she was healthy for the game, though. I liked what she brought. I'm fine that we've had a break now. I think they could bring her. I think that she could be back for longer than 2 months, personally. I think that's the whole taking control of a random enemy minion death rattle is just such a strong puzzle. Like, it doesn't matter whether you're playing her or playing against her. It completely morphs the way you need to think about things, because if you're about the player, you need to think about, all right, how do I manipulate this board so that I have the highest chance of actually stealing something worthwhile or stealing anything at all, because hard removal tends to come out against Sylvanas. Versus if you're playing against her, same thing. You have to think, if you don't have just an answer, like a silence or a hex, preferably.
Which with the addition with N'Zoth too, right? You can't even just silence, because then she'll die and she'll still come back.
Right.
You need to change her. You need to hex her or polymorph her.
Exactly.
Evolve or devolve. Yeah.
Yeah. Or just, I don't know, go so wide that you're like, whatever, you got a Murloc, I'll be fine.
Yeah.
But sometimes they get the war leader and you're not fine. So I'm really stoked that Sylvanas come back. Also glad that Ragnar's come back. See my comments from last week. But I like all the kind of weight you're putting on N'Zoth. I'm with you. I think N'Zoth just opens the floodgates for late game death rattle plans. It's like so wide, so freaking wide, because of just, it has to be late game because of the mana cost, but it's also a 5/7, so you get a good body and a really powerful effect. But I'm excited to see.
I really did enjoy playing with all the old gods. I think, Cthulhu was great. I liked Yogg, but I know Garrett, not a big Yogg fan, and N'Zoth was great too. I think even Yasharaj in places was fine. So I love that they're bringing N'Zoth back to standard, and it's not only bringing N'Zoth back to standard play that, impacts us on the ladder and us having fun and stuff, but also impacts Grandmasters, because we've got playoffs coming up. So this update, like we said, went live today. So like I said last week, the update I didn't think was going to go live before they actually had their relegation week. So they did play the full 7 weeks of Hearthstone Grandmasters up into playoffs and relegations in the old meta. And now they've introduced the cards. So introducing those new cards are going to come into play for playoffs and Grandmaster finals. Now, playoffs, I believe, start on the, I want to say 18th. Yeah, the 18th. So not this weekend, next weekend. So they get a week off before they go into playoffs. And then obviously 2 weeks after that, we've got the BlizzCon final weekend. So it gives them a little bit of time to figure out the meta and formulate some new decks. So Garrett, what are you hoping to see in the Grandmasters finals? Do you think these cards are going to have a big impact?
I think, we're seeing Highlander lists get taken to Grandmasters. So that no matter what, I think there's a really high chance that we're going to see some of these. We're definitely going to see some of these cards
make it in. Yeah. Highlander decks seem to be very, very, very popular right now. And they have so much room, like we talked about when we covered some of them in the past. Highlander decks just have so much room to tech stuff in that I would be shocked if a lot of these lists didn't include like Sylvanas and Rag, just off the top of my head.
Yeah, they're just very, very strong cards. But also, like, I think we're sleeping on Emperor Thaurissan. Everyone, I know we're all excited about our fancy legendaries that do really cool things. But Emperor Thaurissan was a force back in the day.
When this card was first announced, when Emperor Thaurissan was first announced, I remember fighting with Karma because she was like, no, this card's going to be terrible. I'm like, no, this card's going to be great. Even if you get like 2 reductions, it's going to be so good. And she was like, no, it's terrible. I hate it. I was like, you wait. And that was like back in the day, my life drinker kind of incident.
Yeah, those
like
were
the first time in Hearthstone I had been right. It was when they released Thaurissan.
Yeah, I mean, those were the pretty damn early days too, though, right?
It was very early days when I had no idea what I was talking about.
Yeah, Black Rock Mountain. Yeah, but no, you're right. But we weren't, I think, keeping in mind like the perfect combos, the combo potential, the things that you could really pull off in Hearthstone combo wise. And that's where Thaurissan is just terrifying because it's an end of turn effect. You're guaranteed to get at least 1 discount. And so my first thought is immediately Shudderwalk. I cannot tell you how many times I've been looking at Shudderwalk as a quest shaman. My quest is complete, and I'm like, if only I could hit my hero power before I Shudderwalk. But damn it, that Shudderwalk is 9 mana. Well, guess what? I played Emperor Thaurissan. At some point, that Shudderwalk is now 8 mana. It doesn't matter if you had an answer for that Emperor Thaurissan. Like, Snipe doesn't even get you out of this one. It's got 5 health.
Yep. Man. This is going to be such an exciting Grandmasters finals. Playoffs and finals. I'm excited to see what they come up with. And you're totally right. I had forgotten about all the kind of little changes that they had made in order to get rid of some of these combos that automatically bringing Thaurissan back is just like, you can do them again. Let's go.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm looking forward to it. It's also a whole event with this. We're getting 3 weeks of unique tavern brawls. This is the whole namesake Doom in the Tomb. We've got both Reno and we've essentially got both the Explorers and the League of Evil going down into this creepy tomb with the Headless Horseman from Warcraft. He's back and he will not stop rhyming. Thank God. But so the first week of Tavern Brawls, starting I guess today, is Doom in the Tomb Part 1. It's another mini dungeon run. These have been very popular. We've all, for the most part, a lot of us have enjoyed these mini dungeon runs. It is returning, and we get to run it as our favorite member from the League of Evil. Next week, Doom in the Tomb will return, but this time we get to go in as our favorite member of the League of Explorers, which we should be abundantly familiar with at this point. Tombs of Terror and everything. So, and then the final week 3, is going to be the Haunted Carousel, which really, to me, looks like a super spooky version of the Carousel boss from Dalaran Heist.
I'm okay with that.
I am too.
I like spooky versions of things.
The Carousel, I think the first time I
love October.
I think the first time I went up against the Carousel in Dalaran Heist, it kicked my butt. So there's that. Anyways. Yeah. But yeah, really at the end of the day, just like there's 2 things I'm really excited about here: getting to play with wild cards and getting to watch pros play with wild cards. Because it's October 8th at the time of recording this. BlizzCon is definitely less than 2 months away. So this is going to overlap. Super stoked about that.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I was like, yeah, Garrett, it's in a couple of weeks. Like, why would you say it like that? But then I forgot about the 2 months of cards being good. Yeah. Okay. That makes more sense. I was like, you do know when BlizzCon is, don't you?
Yep. Hey, tell me about esports that I'm not excited about.
Right. So the global games are coming back. There was an announcement from Blizzard on the official Play Hearthstone blog that the global games are returning in the Grandmasters off season. So there's going to be 32, regions, countries represented. And instead of teams of 4 this time, we're getting teams of 2. So they're using the Grandmasters format, which is the Shield best of 5 conquest. And there's going to be $75,000 worth of prizing available. The way that they're choosing the teams for global games is that they're going to take the highest prize earner from each country or region in the 2019 Masters Tour. They will be first in line for an invite to compete. Then the second player on each team is basically going to be handpicked by Blizzard with the same criteria they used for original Grandmasters, which is lifetime earnings and or contributions to the Hearthstone community. So basically, these are just the invites that they get to hand out. So they are going to be essentially appointing one person from the team, and the second spot will be by the highest earner through the Masters Tour. Through part of the, like the Grandmasters relegations that happened, they also put up a post I guess about a week ago, maybe a week and a half ago now, detailing people's kind of, standings heading into Bucharest. So if you guys are interested to know who might be representing your country at the Global Games, do go and check out that blog post as well. Links are in our show notes under the relegation Grandmasters news, I guess. But that information is out there if you're looking for it. The Global Games are going to be played between November 15th and December 22nd. So a little bit shorter time frame this time. Obviously, finals not at BlizzCon. Will be wrapped up by the end of the year. But if you are interested in seeing what this looks like, they're coming back.
They need to make it wild or arena or do something more interesting with this, in my opinion.
I agree.
Never a huge fan.
I would like to see this be wild.
Yeah.
I think it's an opportunity that they've kind of missed because, we're coming off of 2 seasons of Grandmasters. We're, in theory, going into season 3. This is the off season. I think it's their chance to do something different with their esports. So I agree with you. I would have liked to see them do like a Twitch Rivals arena thing or a wild tournament. Either way would have been cool, but they're sticking with their format, so
yeah,
is what it is.
Yeah, global games have just never been my jam, and this is not going to change that for me.
Yep.
Anyways, before we get into the meaty topic of relegations, and also all the well wishes for TJ, because I can't. It was just an emotional week for Hearthstone Esports before it even got emotional today. We have a sponsor to thank today. It's Harry's. They're back sponsoring this episode of The Angry Chicken. And they're probably wondering, oh man, what a weird week to sponsor. Boy, we're sure glad we sponsored this Hearthstone episode the week when everyone's talking about it. Although, I don't know, maybe we'll get more downloads for this. Maybe it'll work in our favor. Probably not. I think people are going to yell at me on Twitter. But yeah, if you've never heard of Harry's, you should go check them out over at harrys.com/TAC. You can join the 10 million who have tried Harry's razors. You can claim your special trial offer by going to that URL. Again, it is harrys.com/TAC. Jocelyn, I don't know if you've noticed this about me, but I'm not as bearded as I once was.
I have noticed that. You're looking very smooth.
Thank you. I aim to be smooth. I don't know. I don't like chunky peanut butter. That's all I can tell. That there's a joke in there somewhere, and I am not smart enough to get it, to get there. But I'm just I'm a little over beard life for right now. I have been kind of keeping the 5 o'clock shadow around the face, but I'm like getting the neck and the upper cheeks closer than I ever have before, which means I'm really making my Harry's razor work for it, and it holds up. It does a really good job. I know I've talked at nauseum about how much I like the trimmer blade in the past because, I'm in Florida. You got to take your shirt off. Sometimes hair grows places you don't want it showing. Mine goes from my chest further up my... It goes further up my neck from my chest than I would like it to, Jocelyn. It's like... so you don't carve letters into your chest hair? Yeah. If the hair, running from your belly button down is a happy trail, when it starts exceeding past up towards your neck, I guess I have a happy highway. I don't know what's going on, but it needs to be dealt with. And the trimmer blade helps me do that. And I'm thankful for it. And the 5-blade razor and their lubricating strip, it's just super smooth. I get a super smooth shave every time. I've never been particularly good at shaving, and I have yet to cut myself with a Harry's razor or have any painful pulling or anything like that. So since they have an offer for you all listening, you should go redeem your trial set right now over at harrys.com/TAC. You're going to get their weighted ergonomic handle. You're going to get a 5-blade razor with a lubricating strip and that trimmer blade that I love so much. You're going to get a rich lathering shave gel with aloe to help keep your skin hydrated. And you're going to have a travel blade cover. Travel blade cover, going to keep it dry. Makes it easy to bring around. Not cut yourself when you go reaching blindly into your overnight bag. Big fan. Used it a lot recently because I've been on a plane more than I ever cared to be. I feel like I'm getting too old for travel, Jocelyn.
Ooh.
Getting a little cranky about.
You're not that old, Garrett. Come on.
Maybe I've just been lucky enough to travel more than I have the stomach for. Maybe that's it.
Fair enough.
Maybe that's it. I get homesick real quick. I love my dogs. I love my wife, but I won't bore you with that mushy thing. But I can tell you when you're traveling, there's nothing I like better to keep myself looking like I have some grasp of keeping myself presentable. And I do that with my Harry's razor. So go check them out, harrys.com/TAC, and start shaving better today. We thank them for their support. And we thank you for joining us to get a little sad and talk about GM relegations, because it is here, the end of season 2 of Grandmasters. And with it has come relegations, which means we are saying goodbye to 6 Hearthstone pros. And
yeah, and I mean, I think the real kind of news, because obviously we all knew that there were relegations coming. It was no secret. I mean, we on the show before have called for more relegations, possibly more all at once or more throughout their seasons or what. I don't know what the solution is, but we knew relegations were coming. We wanted them. We needed movement in the league. But I think what really was highlighted for me this weekend, because I was able to actually catch a lot of this live, was the tone of the interviews when they talked to some of these relegated players was just absolutely incredible to me, because it really highlighted what I think is the problem with Blizzard esports in the current Grandmaster system, and that I've talked about in the past, is that there is no relegation playoff and there is no B league for them to drop down to, which I think is a huge problem. And anywhere else in Garrett, I think is it GSL that does this as well, where they have like an A and B league or a
yes, they have S tier and they have A tier. So they have Code S and they have Code A, and S tier is the top of the top. There's 3 seasons a year where we start off in the round of 32. So it's 32 Code S players, and if you don't do well, you can fall down to Code A and have to fight your way back up.
And then. But there's a way to get back up again in a expedient fashion, shall we say.
Yeah, and there's still money to be won in Code A. It's still a tournament. Yeah. And that's, I mean, I cannot be more biased, because this is the esport that I have been consuming for my entire life, knowing what esports even were. So yeah, I'm gonna be a little biased towards GSL, but I really like the system, and I think it makes a really strong case for having a lower league system.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I've been covering Rocket League this year that also has a similar system with an RLCS and an RLRS, with money being won in both places and with relegation playoffs. So basically they take, the bottom 2 of the top league and the top 2 of the bottom league, they play off. And then so even if technically you're up for relegation in the RLCS, you could still maintain your spot if you manage to beat the 2 teams that are trying to get promoted. So having that extra step of a playoff, it just helps, I guess, a little bit with the scene. And I've noticed in Rocket League too, that there seems to be kind of like a continuum of talent. Like, it's not so much like there's an A tier and a B tier, and it's very obvious who belongs in each. It very much could just be like a 16 team league, because they're all fairly close in talent. And it's kind of interesting, because Hearthstone just doesn't have that. And I saw a tweet over the weekend from Boar Control, who was kind of echoing what I was already thinking as a kind of no-name person watching, just a viewer. And so Boar Control is actually involved in the Grandmaster system. He is one of the Grandmasters over in Europe. And he said, listening to the relegation interviews and seeing the focus being on what players will do after Hearthstone rather than being on what they can do to requalify exemplifies the problem with the system. And I couldn't agree more, because a lot of the tones, there were tiers on both sides, from players, from casters. There was so much emotion here, and a lot of them, even the winners, talked about, the stress of being close to relegation and, their mental health over the past weeks, and how it had been so negatively affected, because it is so difficult to re-qualify into the Grandmaster system that for a lot of these players, this is probably the end of their Hearthstone careers. And facing that when you don't want to retire, you don't want to get relegated, you don't want to end your career, that is extraordinarily emotional for a lot of these guys. So
it was, I mean, God, it couldn't have been, I don't know, more traumatic as a fan of Hearthstone, like watching Orange.
It's hard to watch. Oh my God, Orange.
Like, sorry to literally everyone else who got relegated, but like Orange is a fan favorite for, and Division A in EU was ridiculous. There was a 4-way tie. So we like,
you were literally either in the playoffs in Division A and EU, or you were at risk of relegation that came down to tiebreakers. There was no in between in Division A.
Yeah, and it came down to something I'm not very used. It came down to something I'm not very used to seeing in Hearthstone, which is like watching Orange play his games and win, and then we all have to just sit there and wait until the rest of the matchups play out to see if Orange is even still in or not. I'm just using Orange as an example because a lot of us are Orange fans. I'm an Orange fan. I'm biased. Sorry, everybody. Met the dude like one time. He was just really nice. Just made a good impression. I've liked the guy ever since.
He seems to have a lot of heart and to just really love the game of Hearthstone, and also always wants to do his absolute best, which I think is another reason why Orange in particular was such a heartbreaker, because of the way the Division A and EU played out, on top of, you know, some of the others that were staying in other regions and other divisions that maybe, you know, didn't work as hard as Orange did and had worse records, but just happened to be in a different division, and their career is safe and his career is not. And that, again, like, I echo what you're saying, Garrett, in that I think that all of the Grandmasters are great players. This is not to belittle or lessen their contribution to the Grandmaster system or the Hearthstone community as a whole. I think these are all great people and great players. But, you know, to see someone like Orange get relegated in a situation like this, it was just heartbreaking.
Yeah. And I know Division A was pretty unique in how perfectly tied everything was. But the whole kind of like point system of like sitting and waiting for other things to play out didn't make for the best spectator experience in my mind. I know I always tend to interject car references where they aren't always necessary, but I'm a big fan of competitive drifting. Katie and I watch every Formula Drift event all year long, and we go to some of them in person.
The Fast and the Furious.
Hey, there's a Fast and the Furious about drifting. It's called Tokyo Drift, and they used Formula Drift drivers as stunt drivers in there. Little spirally up the ramp in the garage, the spiral that was done in one take, and it was a legitimate stunt.
Wow.
Anyways, I digress. They do a point system, and so last year, and it's going to be the same this year because they're to their last event of the year. You get to the final event, and you could just watch like the last 4 to 6 to 8 rounds play out, and those people might not win. That made it to like the top 8 of the final event because someone just creamed it in the beginning of the year, and they're just sitting in the pit just praying everyone else screws up. And it kind of works there. There's also like the events are like like the main event is one day. There's multiple months sometimes between events. So it's whatever. You're keeping an eye on a scoreboard. You're keeping up with this kind of thing. It kind of works there. But for Hearthstone, for Grandmasters, for a system that had this many games played this closely back to back, it didn't really do it for me. If for no other reason, like it was, I didn't think it was the best spectator experience on top of just being kind of sad. And it was something I wasn't really expecting, not from everyone. Like at a certain point, I kind of expected, I expect a certain degree of cockiness from my pro players, but like every interview was just like, oh man, I just don't want my friends to go away. We're all a close knit family. Stuff like I heard that sentiments like that over and over again, and God, it's another part of the thing playing into like my emotions today. About what's happening with Blitzchung, like all of that played into this because it's just like I don't know, I'm gonna get personal for a sec, Joce. The folks who were like, hey, you should stop doing your show or boycott or switch to Magic or whatever, like I don't have it in me. I can't. It is very difficult for me to do that. I vehemently disagree with a lot of things that are going on right now. this is like a family to me. This is a community. This is a job. I wouldn't make rent. And I also would have a lot of people that I deal with on a regular basis that I would no longer converse with on a regular basis, have a reason to converse with on a regular basis. And I would miss that. And that's why it is hard for me. And you can say I'm weak or whatever. It may be right, but I can't do that. It's very difficult for me. This is become so much a part of who I am and how I live my life. And those feelings were brought up watching these relegation, watching all of the interviews, even if whether it was relegation or not, like winners, like Purple was such a good example. Dude won. Dude was in a winning position already. And listening to Purple's interview of him just being like, man, I don't want anyone to go home. We all know each other. We're all friends.
Well, and I think yeah, absolutely. And I think like my heart went out to Zalay in particular, because he was actually in his last match of the weekend facing off against Race, who from basically the winner of that match went on, the loser went home, which is was relegated. And that is something that we've seen over and over and over in Hearthstone esports, where, we've had these kind of decider matches all the time in tournaments where it's like, okay, winner goes to top 8, loser goes home. That's the way that esports works. But it was so much more emotional this time around. And I mean, watching Zalay's winners interview, because Zalay won the match, he is not relegated. And he was almost in tears and just sitting there saying, basically, I didn't budget my time well. I'll do better next time. I'm so sorry, everyone, blah, 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 blah. And talking about just the positivity, the small amounts of positivity in the community that he was able to see, like how that really made a difference to him. And I think that's a good lesson to take away from all of this is, to be as positive as we possibly can to these players, to each other, to just people you don't know, because he looked so heartbroken at winning. I just wanted to give Zalay a hug. Because geez, man, it just was a rough weekend. Really rough.
Yeah, that was another big one for me, because I really enjoyed kind of watching him come back, middle of this season. And he was like, "Oh,
right,
Zalay
you have been his champion."
I mean, I've always liked Zalay, but I've never I don't know. I've kind of followed him more as a personality than a player. For whatever reason, I have no reason why. I cannot tell you. I just ended up watching more of his thoughts on things than I did his actual games, and then just kind of chewing through Grandmasters. I was like, man, Zalay's making a comeback. I think he can stabilize, and I just started rooting for the dude because I already liked him. So that was another big one for me, but. Yeah, it's a mixed bag. Because I think this is good TV. From a selfish aspect, again, God, it was so tense. That it was you didn't want to stop watching. You wanted to see how things played out. You wanted to, see who made it and who got relegated. But at the same time, I think this will take its toll if they don't kind of soften the blow or just kind of make the Hearthstone esports scene a little more, I don't want to say forgiving. I think kind of, I always come back to the word sustainable. And
yeah, exactly. And I think the health of the league is really going to be called into question here if, even in their official broadcast, they can't think of ways to be like, so what are your plans for, next season? How are you going to make your way back in? Are we going to see you in Bucharest? Do you think you can make a run for the title there? Because winning in Bucharest is pretty much a guaranteed, way back into Grandmasters. So none of them were talking about how they may or may not be performing in these, or if they could even make it back in, because it seems like such a long shot. And I think that's what needs to be highlighted here is that just having one league system without something that plays into it better and more consistently than the current Masters Tour, they need to fill that gap there, however they decide to do it. But just saying, you go from the pinnacle of Hearthstone esports, you go from the Grandmaster system to you might as well just give up and retire if you get relegated. There's a huge disconnect there. And I think Zalay specifically, and I know Patra is another one where they made it into the league based on these kind of like community, like what did they call them? Legends. Sorry, they were the legends. So the fact that he like made it in as a legend, I'm sure that must have put a whole lot more pressure on him, because he's one of the ones that was picked for his contributions to the community, as opposed to, you know, his top prize money earnings or points earnings in the previous season. So I feel like that must have just weighed on him so much more throughout the entire Grandmaster season. So I don't know. I feel like something is fundamentally broken in this system. And as much as I enjoyed watching a league, I don't know if this is the best thing for Hearthstone to do going forward. I don't want to see them go back to the tour system, because I think the tour system itself from last year was super flawed, with too many tournaments, too much travel put on the players. But I don't really know how they put something together out of these things, like taking the best of all of those systems and making a cohesive esport next year. I don't know. I mean, obviously everyone who didn't get relegated is really hoping that they stick to Grandmasters, but I don't know. I feel like this system is fundamentally flawed when we're not talking about how you work your way back in. Instead, we're talking about what are you going to do with your life after Hearthstone, all of you relegated players. It seems like a ridiculous conversation, especially for the names that we're seeing getting relegated, like Fino. Oh my God. We haven't even talked about the fact that Fino got relegated. Are you kidding me? Like, Fino is just supposed to walk away from Hearthstone. Did you guys watch him last year? So many emotions today, Garrett. So many emotions.
Yeah, it's a rough one, for sure.
But I think, like, very, very briefly, I think we should take the time, since the Hearthstone broadcast didn't, to talk about how you actually get promoted into those spaces that have opened up in Grandmasters. So right now, we know for sure that there are 2 in each region. Like we said, the Blitzchung issue, we're not sure how that's going to play out in terms of how his spot will be filled, or if they might potentially reverse that decision. We just don't know right now. So, for the purposes here, we're just going to talk about 2 open spots in each region. Like I mentioned earlier on in the show, when we were talking about how you qualify as part of the Global Games program, Hearthstone did actually put up standings, or basically like a blog post saying, here's everybody who is on the verge of making it into Grandmasters. Essentially, the big prize money winners in Vegas aren't a part of this equation, because Dog has quit and Gallon will not be relegated. So his he's not up for relegation. So basically, since they took the top 2 prizes in Vegas, it kind of takes that ranking, that money off the table, because that's how this thing is going to be decided, is who has won the most base prize money. So obviously we had the size of the tournament plays into how much money you actually make, because we had the esports bundle that helped increase the prize pool. So I believe Seoul had less participants than Vegas did. So that prize pool was split up and each individual player got more. They don't count that bonus money. They only count the base prize. So I believe it's 50,000 for the first, 25, 10, and so on down the line. So like I said, those Vegas prizes are essentially not being counted, because our first and second place players are either in or out of Grandmasters already, which means that NA is essentially wide open, and the EU spots are going to be hard to come by for that exact same reason. In Bucharest, both of our first and second place players came from EU. So you essentially, if you're in the EU, have to win in order to be in contention for an EU Grandmaster spot. So you would have to win in Bucharest. So that's happening October 18th to 20th. And all the Grandmasters are invited to these tournaments. It's part of their contract. So technically, Fino, Orange, Race, Stripecrow, Patra, and Blood Trail do have invites to that tournament, and so could potentially win it and get their Grandmaster spot back. But nobody was talking about that.
Yeah, kind of a big part. I mean, there's just so... a lot of games, long broadcasts, a lot of emotions, a lot to cover. So it sort of seems like it should have been in there, though.
Right? Like they forgot the ray of hope at the end of the tunnel, the light at the end of the tunnel for these players. So, I mean, especially for those NA spots for Race and for Strifecrow, they're definitely up for grabs, because I think, and I'm going to do some great radio stuff right now and pull up the article and just take a look. But the top America players, or top two America's players right now there's actually a tie for second at $3,000 and the top player is $3,500. So you could, with a good performance in the top like 3 or 4 of Bucharest, you could absolutely make a run for one of those America spots if you are in the Americas. APAC is similar, but it's a little bit tighter. Top winner there is Possessi, I think, or Poisi. I'm sorry, I'm totally probably butchering that. But he has 10K winnings so far. So very, very likely that we'll be seeing him in Grandmasters. But again, Bucharest is still on the table with all of its prize pools. Looks like in Europe, we are probably going to see Felkine for sure. I think he's pretty much locked it down with a win in Seoul. He has 50,000 in winnings right now. So basically, if we get another European winner, then that would drop Zim out of contention. But Zim was our runner-up in Seoul, so he has 25,000. So if he also performs well in Bucharest, then he could actually overtake Felkine. But I think Felkine with a win in Seoul is he's pretty secure in the fact that he'll be moving forward. Yeah,
it's a pretty sizable divide. So
yeah,
Zim would have to place very high.
Well, and even then there's 2 spots, right? So yeah. He can be overtaken, but yeah, we'll have to see. So, and there are some interesting names like that you'll be familiar with if you've been paying attention to the scene over the past couple of years, who are kind of in contention for those spots. Aka Wonder, Hoy, and then over in the Americas, we've got Language Hacker, we've got Dr. J, we've got APX. Like, there's a lot of players that are kind of household names if you were paying attention to the tour system last year. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see who ends up in the Grandmaster system, but man, it feels bad for the players getting relegated. I hope that they at least take a shot in Bucharest. I know it's not always necessarily feasible, I guess is the best way to put it, because of obviously travel costs and everything else. And if you didn't know you were going to get relegated, or maybe you don't want back in Grandmasters, that's also, a possibility. So we'll see what happens. But
are you talking the dog specifically?
Huh? No, I'm not talking about dog at all.
He doesn't want back in besides dog.
I mean, I don't want to get into this today, but if I was Patra, I don't think I would want to go back into Grandmasters. So yeah, we don't have to dive, because it's been a long show, an emotional day. We don't have to dive into that whole conversation. But yeah, there are potentially people who are ready to retire. Like maybe this was Strife Crow's, last hurrah. He's been in the scene for a really long time. He took a lot of time off heading into Grandmasters, and maybe he is ready to be done with Hearthstone. I don't know. So yeah, but I'm sure people like Fino and Orange probably want to get back in, and Bucharest is not the trek it is for them that it might be for someone in the Americas or in APAC. So
yeah, I mean, judging by Orange's Twitter, dude's already right back to it.
Yeah, good
deck testing on all kinds of things. So,
but yeah,
I think we'll see him thrown down. And then finally, TJ, the caster.
Yes.
If you missed this, he is taking time off for heart surgery, and it sounds like he's going to be out for essentially the rest of the competitive year.
Yeah, so it sounds like it's going to be a few months of recovery time for him, where he won't be able to work or kind of do anything at all. Won't be able to sit behind a desk, won't be able to cast or anything like that. So he is taking a significant amount of time off for a very serious surgery. So if you guys haven't already, do jump over to Twitter, send him your love, give him lots of internet hugs and gifts, and try to make him smile. He's going to need us over the next few months. So let's be there for part of our community.
Yeah. Definitely. I couldn't believe it when I read it. I guess he had a tweet at some point earlier kind of explaining that, oh, hey, I've had this condition. I've had things happen in the past. But I totally missed that. Yeah. So all I saw was the tweet longer where he was like, I have to go get emergency surgery. I'm going to be gone for a while. And I was just like, oh my God, TJ. Dude's.
Yeah, I think he went into it a little bit on the broadcast, and he had posted just that he was having health issues. He didn't really go into it a couple months ago. So since he's had to now step away from the broadcast, he did talk about it a little bit on the actual broadcast itself, and also wrote out a tweet longer. So you guys can go find that on the internet.
Yeah. Yeah. So send all of the internet hugs TJ's way. We're pulling for you, dude. Excited to hope to see you back casting again. I've watched so many hours of TJ talk to me about Hearthstone. He has no idea who I am. He's been in my brain
TJ,
a lot.
TJ has been around for a really long time. He was casting before he was hired, and now he's been hired by Blizzard. And so he's been around for quite a while, and he's been involved both on and off the scenes with all the Hearthstone esports broadcasts. And yeah, he's a good guy.
Yep. Well, before we move into crazy game stories, and if we have time, take an email before we head out, we have one more sponsor to thank today, and that is Away. Away Luggage. I know I was talking about how I'm a little travel weary at the moment, but the one thing that isn't driving me nuts is my luggage, and that's because when we got sponsored by Away Travel, they were like, "Yo, here's a piece of luggage, enjoy." And I was just like, "This is the nicest thing I own."
Doesn't it make you feel like an adult?
I had like a hand-me-down paisley piece of crap before my Away luggage, and it's lovely. You should go check out their offerings over at awaytravel.com/TAC20. We'll explain that just in a moment. Well, I'll let you get $20 off your order. Use the code TAC20. Go check it out.
It's easy.
But if you've never checked them out, I mean, they have like every size of luggage you could ever possibly want. But we, being the nerds that we are, playing games on devices powered by batteries that eventually die, we're big fans of the carry-ons because both sizes of the carry-ons have the option for an ejectable battery. Like you can get a ton of phone charges out of this thing. And I like it because that means I don't need to sit next to strangers, next to the one charging port at a almost 200-person seating area. All right,
I get to walk around the airport to any place that there's a Pokestop. And I don't have to worry about if my phone's going to die because Pokemon, oh man, that thing drains your battery.
Yes, it does. I've never played Pokemon Go at an airport. That makes so much sense. What is wrong with me?
There are so many, and you have so much time to kill. It's like all of those shops are like stops or gyms.
My God. I was laid over for 4 hours this past weekend. I did the Sky Club for the first time ever. It's like, I don't travel that much, so
that sounds fancy.
I saw the pay to go in. It's like a nicer lounge, and they've got like food and drinks and places to hang out. They have little offices where you can go in and plug in, and it was lovely.
You fit right in with your Away luggage.
I did.
They were like, "Oh, that guy belongs here."
I did. I had such a good time. I like busted out my laptop. I got some work done, and really, what I'm trying to say, Jocelyn, is that Away. It just makes me feel like I'm there all the time, basically, because my luggage is so fancy. Anywhere can be my Sky Lounge because I don't need. I've got power. I've got a nice. Organizable piece of carry-on luggage here. It's got a little bag to put your dirty clothes in. Like I was putting like my wet bathing suit in there. It's great. You should go check it out. On top of all these things, they've got really nice wheels, like all the 4-wheel design, so you can move it standing straight up. They're super smooth. It's durable as all get out. I know this because I have functioning ears whenever a plane lands and they start moving my luggage off, and it just sounds like they're throwing bricks around. Nothing has broken on mine yet, and I also have dropped it a few times out of the back of a hatchback, fully loaded.
It happens.
Well, it's quite heavy, and nothing's busted. Nothing's busted. So in a way, we'll fix or replace the suitcase ASAP if anything ever breaks. I don't have to worry about my luggage. Big fan. Go check them out. TSA approved combination locks. They've got the compressions pad that Jocelyn's a big fan of. Free shipping in the lower 48 states, a 100-day trial. You can straight up travel with it during that the 100-day trial and a lifetime warranty. On top of all this, you can get $20 off the suitcase by going to awaytravel.com/TAC20 and using the promo code TAC20 during checkout. We thank them for their support, and we thank you for sending in crazy game stories because sometimes we just want to hear about dumb shit that happens in Hearthstone, and this is definitely one of those weeks.
The whole world gone crazy.
You're in trouble now.
You got it.
You can send your crazy game stories to TACpodcast@gmail.com. Who writes in this week, Jocelyn?
This one comes to us from Sean W., who says, "Greetings, feathered incarnates of the undying rage of 1,000 raging worgans, but poultry instead of wolves." After their release, I decided to try out Elise in Chapter 3 of Tombs of Terror, seeing as I have Reno and Sir Finley fully unlocked. After failing several times in Chapter 3, I went back to Chapter 1 with Elise and was able to one-shot the Plague Lord with the help of High Prophet Baram's Burst of Light hero power, which I stole using the Stolen Titan Treasures secret, Stolen Titan Secrets Treasure. Defeating the Plague Lord unlocked the Junior Navigator, which puts 2 copies of whatever spell you cast on her back in your hand. After some theory crafting, I discovered an infinite combo with her and Elise's second hero power, which puts a Moonfire in your hand after you play 2 spells in a turn, assuming you can reduce the cost of the spell to 0. With this new minion unlocked and a strategy formed, I ventured into Chapter 2 to try out my plan. I was able to get all the pieces in place by the 5th boss, reducing the cost of several buffs to 0 thanks to a pack mule from the tavern and Khadgar's scrying gem on the 7th boss. The odds were in my favor and I saw the combo work firsthand. I was ready to take on the Plague Lord of Madness. The first 2 turns were mundane, but on the 3rd turn, I decided to use one of the treasures I had acquired, the Map of Uldum, which discovers a number of cards and grants a number of mana crystals equal to the number of bosses you've defeated. So on turn 3, I discovered 7 cards and gained 7 mana crystals. One of the cards I discovered was Yasharaj, and with 10 mana now available, I drop him on board and end my turn. His power triggers, and to my initial joy and then immediate disappointment and anger, my Junior Navigator is pulled from my deck and placed to the right of Yasharaj. Plague Lord's turn begins, and thanks to his hero power, my Junior Navigator was whisked away to his, or its, side of the board. Crap. Okay, there's still a chance I can get her back, is what I think at first. The Plague Lord takes his turn, putting a minion to the left of my Junior Navigator before ending his turn. The chapter's twist triggers, forcing my Navigator to attack a random target, promptly kamikazing her into my Yasharaj, with the possibility of my fought for and perfectly orchestrated strategy now completely obliterated. I responded in the most level-headed way I could manage. F you! And rage quit. I don't know if I'll get the stars to align again, but that won't stop me from trying.
Well, Sean, on your behalf, just let me just say, you can end that. You can end that. That's so very, we just came out of relegations and a lot of hard news. So thank you, Jocelyn, for picking such a sad and emotional crazy game story.
This is one I picked for like 2 weeks ago and we've had to cut for length.
There's a lot of Hearthstone stuff to talk about. And this week was no different, for sadly not the best of reasons, but
yeah, I don't, it just made me laugh because I've definitely done this against the Plague Lords before.
Sean, I'm disappointed on your behalf. That, hey Josh, last week I was like, I'm kind of getting got a little salty. I got a little salty at the single player for like the first time ever, and it was a weird feeling. Nothing I experienced comes even close to how upsetting this would be. How upsetting this would make me. God, we didn't really have a chance because of just the bummerific topics today. But did you? I'm assuming you finished the Tombs of Terror.
Yes, I did.
So what do you think? The pantheon of single players is, considering you and I kind of share the assumption or the belief that really this year is the only year that they've been really good. Mm-hmm. How do you feel? How do you like the Tombs of Terror?
I really, really liked it. I liked the additional layer of something else to unlock. And I know I'm probably in the minority here, but I kind of liked that I had to like re-unlock stuff when I went into Heroic. Because I don't know, I like the feeling of progression and that things that I'm doing are making more things available to me. And I do like the idea of, the heroic bosses being harder and therefore, not just getting tools that make them easy right away. So I liked it a lot. I mean, I don't know necessarily. It's probably my favorite out of all of the single players. I liked a lot of the boss design. I liked the twists in the chapters. And then on top of all of that, you had the extra layer of unlockables with your starting treasures. So I think they really checked a lot of boxes for me here. What about you, Garrett?
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I mean, some of my comments about how some of the bosses just seemed to like perfectly counter me and make me salty stand. But overall, like just the the extra little added layers that they brought in for Tombs of Terror. I mean, again, I'm just going to take this last chance to say I was right, and they gave us unlockable treasures. So they literally gave me something I wanted. Like I think this is the first time ever in 335 episodes of The Angry Chicken that I've ever been like, I want this thing. And Team 5 was like, hey, here's this thing. It's never happened, Jocelyn.
Yeah, it feels good.
It does feel good. It does feel good. Yeah, it's great. It's great. The extra the VIP tavern visits are so very cool. Although again, let's just do that all the time. Just make that the regular tavern. And then the next time, make that the regular tavern and then make the VIP tavern. Here's your deck list. Do whatever you want with it. Go nuts.
I still have not experienced the VIP tavern. I guess my exclusive invite got lost in the mail or something, or maybe I just am not cool enough. I feel like someone is personally targeting me over at Blizzard, and my account is flagged by Team 5 to never get a robot bartender or an invite to the super secret VIP lounge. So yeah, whoever's doing that, if you could just stop and let me see the coolness, I'd really appreciate it. This was a joke.
I can't believe you haven't gotten it.
I haven't gotten it.
That's nuts.
I'm so frustrated.
That's crazy. I've gotten it. It's far from the most common treasure I get offered. I keep getting offered those stupid legendary discs. I hate that treasure so much, Justin. It's such a waste of an option.
I get the evolve your dude, evolve one minion of yours at the end of every turn. I get the play an odd or even to do something, and then I get the weapon that has 10 durability that kills you at the end of that durability. Those are my repeat treasures I get all the freaking time.
So I'll tell you. Okay, so I've gotten the VIP tavern, I think 4 times.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Okay, we get it, Blizzard. Garrett's very important, blah, blah, blah.
Listen, I don't want to hear it, miss. I thought I already had this legendary. Oh, I already have all the Uldum legendaries.
Yeah.
I didn't realize. I don't want to. That's my Jocelyn impression. It's just slightly higher pitched. And it's the voice of someone who doesn't need to think about if they have all the cards in Hearthstone or not, because of course they do. It just happened. They got that lucky. But what I only got one time, and recently, this is while I was traveling, is Bob's deck.
Ooh.
Bob's deck. When you go to the VIP tavern, there's, I guess, a rare chance to actually get a card that just gives you a deck. I forget what the actual name of it is.
And I think it costs all the gold. It costs 4 gold.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
You have, I think it's 6 gold if you get to the VIP tavern. You would know this if you were a very important person.
If I had ever, yeah.
If you were a very important person, you would know this, Jocelyn, but clearly you're just a very rich person. Yeah, it is insane. Have you seen this deck? Have you done any research or seen anyone get it or see what's in it? The ancient one is just a card you can play. It's just in there. It's already finished. You can just play a 30-30.
Wow.
Voltron is in it. It's all these cards that you usually have to do a thing to actually get. They're just in the deck like a friggin' Yeti.
Why doesn't Bob just give those decks to everybody at the beginning? Is Bob maybe partly a bad guy because he's not helping everyone just defeat all of the Plague Lords all of the time?
Because it was the easiest win I have gotten in Tombs of Terror. That deck is busted, Jocelyn. Absolutely.
I know, that's what
busted.
I'm saying. That I think maybe Bob is just actually chaotic evil.
Fair. Fair. Yeah. Had a great time. I'm legitimately anxious to see what they do next, because clearly they're interested in continuing to improve it. So let's see what happens. But before we do that, and before we end this episode, let's take an email and wrap it up.
Hello?
Hello, it's me.
Hello?
Just quickly, do you get my message?
Yep.
Oh.
Hello, brother.
You can send your emails to the same place, techpodcast@gmail.com. If you're a patron, drop us a message in the patron Discord. Knight Rider, spelt with number 1s instead of I's, writes in and says, finally got the chance to listen to one of to one of the recent episodes, and something Garrett said made me crack up. He suggested that nobody who listens to TAC could be a Control Warrior player, given how he's been talking crap about them for a month and nobody's stepped in to defend them. I am actually a Control Warrior player, and I had to pause the episode a couple weeks ago. This was after the nerfs to Boom had just been announced, and go on a 20-minute rant to my wife about how Boom wasn't the death sentence everybody thought it was. It was still very possible to win once the Boom had been dropped, but people just get psyched out by it and give up. But I've been beaten by even token druids and murloc paladins, either because my removal was hiding in the bottom of my deck, or they managed to successfully bait it out of me before making their big move. It obviously was and still is a very powerful card, but I think it has a psychological effect that can cause insta-tilt in some players. Unpopular opinion, but I figured you should hear it from the other side. I'm pretty sure we said that we didn't think Boom was the biggest issue, or at least what they addressed with Boom was the biggest issue.
Yeah, well, that was kind of more my point, is that it wasn't so much the mana cost of Boom as it was just the constantly rushing mechs that make things like Omega Devastator ridiculously powerful. But this also comes, I guess this email came to us after the nerfs of Boom, but before the changes to Discover, which I actually think brought Boom more in line than his mana cost change ever did, because that basically meant that you didn't have access to a lot of the tools that made the crazy rushing warrior mech deck work. So because you didn't have, 18 Devastators and you didn't have all of these other like crazy removal tools coming out of that hero power, then I think it did bring it a lot more back in line, or at least address the concerns that I had with the card. Because I think you're right. I mean, Garrett, I think this email isn't necessarily directed to you. It's definitely directed to both of us. It's just you're the one that made the comment about no one listening to TAC could possibly be a
totally.
Control Warrior.
But
no, I think it was probably mostly my comments, because I am definitely one of the people playing against Boom that when it gets played on curve or early or whatever, I get totally tilted and I'm just like, well, I can't win from here, and I concede and I leave, and I just don't want to play against that card. So I am definitely one of these insta tilt players with the psychological effect 100%, because I've played enough games that eventually I just end up losing to and just getting outvalued by Boom. So I'm one of those players. I totally understand that it's not like a super uber mega powerful automatically win the game card, but sometimes it definitely feels like that. But again, this came pre-Discover, and I think Discover addressed the problems I had with Boom the card. I think it's in an okay place now. Still don't love it, but it's much more, I think, in line with where it should be.
Yeah, at this point, I'm totally fine with it. I'm with you. I think the changes to Discover fixed it, as far as I'm concerned. I think you and I both kind of focused on the rushing aspect, as did a lot of the community when we were like before the nerfs had even been announced. When we were talking about ways we would like to see Boom reined in. But I know we talked about how they can keep getting infinite good mechs through Discover, but I think I did say I would like to see a nerf to Omega Assembly, but I don't think any of us said, hey, just nerf Discover. But like, I mean, that's pretty deep. Like I wouldn't, thinking like that has never really been a thing for me in terms of how you could adjust cards in the game of Hearthstone, but they did. And I think they did it. Frankly, if they unnerfed the mana cost, I think I'd be okay with it. Although I like it where it's at.
Yeah, but I think, again, like even now looking at a 7 mana Boom wouldn't be the end of the world, because like I said, it was a lot of the discovery from the hero power that allowed you to get some of the very, very, very powerful mechs that Warrior had access to consistently. And that was the thing, is it was consistently, you had resources that you shouldn't have access to. And now it's like you get some real bad options when you hit that hero power or when you pop that Omega Assembly that you didn't before. So I think it's good. Yep. I'm happy with it now and the way it is, and could possibly even revert the mana change at this point. But yeah, Thanks for changing Discover, Blizz. I just thought this email was cute with the you have to hear from the other side. Control Warrior players exist.
yeah. Thanks for sending that message in, dude. I read this. I think it was in the patron Discord. From
it was in the patron Discord.
I was laughing at it. But yeah.
Speaking of patrons, hi, we love you.
Yes, we do. Thank you for supporting the show. And if you like the show and would like to support it, patreon.com/TAC. To our most recent patrons, then get a Pascal L, Charlie D, Mix C. Mix with a Z is a really cool name. And then last initial C is in cat. That's rad. That's a rad name. And then Marcus, no less than given. Thank you for supporting the show, everybody. Also, big thanks we're at the end of the show, so thank you to our producers, Declan H, Sean C, and Cheesy Bob. If you like Angry Chicken, you want to support us, patreon.com/TAC. All kinds of perks over there. Go check it out. But yeah, keep the emails coming. tacpodcast@gmail.com. Keep dropping messages in the Discord. Jocelyn, that brings us to the end of, frankly, a little just sweaty, anxiety-addled episode of The Angry Chicken for myself. So thank you, everybody, for bearing with us. And I hope you were happy with it. So that's about all I can do is hope at this point. I'm pretty sure y'all are going to at me.
I think that we did as best a job we could this week. I'm proud of the content we created, and it's about all you can say.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah. This is the first time in my life I'm ever going to say don't at me and mean it. Please don't at me. I don't want to hear it. Anyways,
you can at me as long as you're nice about it. I don't mind having civil conversations with people on any topic, but just keep it civil, folks.
Normally I do. I'm already exhausted this week. I don't want to have those conversations. We can talk next week, everybody. At me next week. At me next week when I'm traveling and probably won't be paying attention to Twitter. That's going to wrap it up for the show. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Jocelyn, before we leave, you've got Extra Life coming up. Where can everybody go and support a good cause?
Well, you can follow me on Twitter and Twitch. I'm at Joce Plays. Twitch is the best place to go and catch the Extra Life stream. My first Saturday stream is going to be noon to midnight this coming Saturday, October 12th. So if after this week of crap, you guys feel like you want to do something good in the world, supporting the Children's Miracle Network of Hospitals is a really good way to feel good about something. And even if you can't support monetarily, it really helps if you guys can come and tune into the stream, boost those viewer numbers, or share the links to the stream or the charity page. Either way, basically just boost the signal, because the more kids we can help, the better. And so that first stream is going to be this coming Saturday, October 12th, starting at noon at twitch.tv/JocePlays.
I'm on Twitter at Garrett Art. All of the shows I do can be found at amove.tv. And just go check it out. Lots of shows over there. Got some traveling coming up, but it shouldn't impact the podcast. So I'll be back on the regular days at the regular times. So until next time, job's done.
Job's done.